Picture this. Outside a cave, roughly 15,000 years ago. The cold cuts deep. You haven't eaten in 2 days. Your child won't stop crying. Past the tree line, a wolf is watching. Not stalking, watching. It's edged closer every night for weeks, gone by morning. Tonight, it isn't looking at you at all. It's staring at the bone scraps by your fire. So, drive it off like your grandfather did, or let it be. That small, forgettable decision might be the most important choice your species ever made. What followed reshaped how we lived, fought, built cities, spread disease, seized power, and let 8 billion people exist tonight. So how did we turn wild animals into something else entirely? It starts with a word more loaded than it sounds: domestication. Most people picture a farmer with a cow, someone taming, in control. But the real story is stranger and older than farming, and its first chapter isn't about a farmer. It's about a wolf. Dogs beat every domesticated animal to the punch, older than sheep, goats, or any crop, and nobody planned it. The textbook version says some Ice Age human grabbed a wolf pup and hand-raised it loyal. Biologists who've worked with real wolves call that a fairy tale. Adults don't tame, and a pup's bonding window shuts within weeks. The real story is quieter and more interesting. Humans are sloppy eaters. Even while starving, hunter-gatherers left bones and half-eaten carcasses behind. Free calories, predictably, night after night. Aggressive wolves that charged the camp got speared. Terrified ones got nothing. But wolves that hung back calmly near the firelight ate, survived, and bred with other calm wolves, generation after generation, until evolution had filtered them by personality alone. Nobody decided anything. The least fearful wolves simply outlasted the rest. Duke anthropologist Brian Hare calls this self-domestication. The friendliest wolves stumbled into a bargain where friendliness meant survival. He and Vanessa Woods call it survival of the friendliest. Humans tolerated wolves because they sense danger first, smelling predators in the dark before anyone in camp notices. Each species offered something the other lacked. Smithsonian archaeologist Melinda Zeter identified 3 routes animals took into our world. Commensal, an animal drawn in by scraps, gradually settling into a mutual arrangement. The wolf at the fire. Cats, probably early chickens. Prey. Humans hunt a species, then manage it, then control its breeding. Goats, sheep, cattle, pigs. Directed. Humans deliberately capture and breed an animal for a purpose, usually horses, donkeys, camels. 3 roads, 1 destination. The wolf story unfolded between 20,000 and 40,000 years ago. Ancient DNA shows dogs splitting from wolves before physical proof turns up in the ground. The earliest confirmed evidence is from Bonn Oberkassel, Germany, where a 1914 dig found a man, a woman, and a dog buried together roughly 14,200 years ago. A 2018 re-examination found a molar from a second, older dog, the only known double dog burial of this era. That younger dog, a 7-month-old puppy, had survived several bouts of canine distemper, usually fatal without weeks of care, offering 0 practical use the whole time it was sick. Someone kept it alive anyway, then buried it with their dead. Not utility, attachment, maybe love. Anthropologist Pat Shipman argues this alliance may have decided which species of human survived. Modern humans reached Europe around 45,000 years ago. Neanderthals had already lived there for hundreds of thousands of years. Yet within 5,000 years, they were gone. Shipman notes Neanderthals left no evidence of allying with animals, while modern humans did, with wolf dog remains found beside huge mammoth bone deposits at their sites. An edge that may have let us outcompete every other human line on the continent. But dogs were just the opening act. The real explosion came with farming. Between 10,000 and 12,000 years ago, across the Fertile Crescent, People started planting seeds and stopped moving for the first time in 300,000 years. Stored grain means rodents, and right behind them came wild cats, solitary desert hunters that suddenly found farming villages to be the richest buffet they'd ever seen. The boldest cats crept in, ate better, bred more. Humans tolerated them because they solved a real problem. Cats tolerated us because we built the greatest mousetrap on Earth. In 2004, archaeologists in Cyprus, which has never had native wild cats, uncovered a 9,500-year-old grave holding a human and an 8-month-old wild cat, buried just 40 centimeters apart. Someone shipped that animal across open water, millennia before Egyptians worshipped cats. Strangely, cats barely changed. House cats stay far closer genetically to their wild ancestors than dogs are to wolves. Yours is still a small wild predator living in your apartment. Cats domesticated themselves. Humans just let it happen. While cats slipped in through the side door, other animals were being actively managed. Zeder's prey pathway. At Ganj Dareh in Iran's Zagros Mountains, geneticist Kevin Daly and Melinda Zeder found humans managing goat herds as early as 8,200 BC. Ancient DNA showed these goats were already genetically distinct from wild bezoars before their bodies changed shape. Genetics shifted first. Physical traits followed centuries later. Sheep followed almost the same path. Pigs were domesticated independently at least twice, in Anatolia around 8,500 BC and China's Yellow River around 6,500 BC. Different populations and cultures landing on the same answer separately. Proof this was a near inevitable response to farming, not one flash of genius spreading outward. Cattle descend from the aurochs, a 6-foot-tall, ton-plus beast Julius Caesar called nearly elephant-sized and impossible to tame, even when caught young. Yet geneticist Joachim Berger traced every taurine cow alive today back to roughly 80 female aurochs domesticated in the Near East about 10,500 years ago. The last wild aurochs died in Poland in 1627, as its domesticated descendants numbered in the hundreds of millions. Domestication reshapes an animal's body even when nobody's trying to. In 1959, Soviet geneticist Dmitry Belyaev began breeding only the calmest silver foxes on a fur farm, selecting purely for behavior. Within a few generations, the foxes acted like dogs, wagging tails, licking hands, rolling over for belly rubs. And their bodies changed too, floppy ears and curled tails, all from selecting one single trait, tameness. Scientists call this domestication syndrome, possibly driven by neural crest cells, embryonic cells shaping faces and pigment, which may get dialed down along with fear. Some scientists think humans domesticated themselves too. Harvard's Richard Wrangham argues Homo sapiens shows the same signs as domesticated animals. Smaller skulls, flatter faces, lower brow ridges than archaic humans. His goodness paradox. Unusually low impulsive aggression for a great ape, but unusually high calculated aggression, as if communities spent millennia weeding out the most violent members. Then there's the horse, arguably the domestication that reshaped civilization most. Kazakhstan's bow tie culture, around 3,500 BC, was long treated as the earliest evidence. But ancient DNA showed bow tie horses were ancestors of feral Przewalski's horses, not modern ones. Modern domestic horses trace to a different lineage. In 2021, Ludovic Orlando's team identified Russia's Volga-Don region as the birthplace of the DOM2 lineage, ancestor of nearly every domestic horse alive, carrying mutations for stronger backs and lower anxiety. Nature supplied the calm, sturdy, raw material first. That lineage's spread lines up with the Santashta culture around 2100 BC, inventors of the spoke-wheeled chariot. For 8,000 years, domesticated animals meant food and labor, never weapons. The horse changed that, and chariot warfare spread across Eurasia within centuries, used by the Hittites, Egyptians, and the Shang dynasty. Civilizations without horses got conquered by those with them. Then there's the chicken, the story that stayed wrong the longest. Textbooks long claimed China, or the Indus Valley, 7,000 to 10,000 years ago. In 2022, an Oxford team led by Gregor Larson used radiocarbon dating across 600 plus sites to show it actually began around 1500 BC in Thailand, triggered by rice farming, pulling the red jungle fowl out of the jungle. Chickens were kept as curiosities first, not eaten in real numbers for centuries. Today, roughly 33 billion exist at any moment, all descended from that jungle bird. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Living permanently alongside animals didn't just give us food and labor, it gave us disease. Roughly 60% of human infectious diseases are zoonotic. Measles, likely from cattle, flu through pigs and poultry, tuberculosis from cattle. The Antonine Plague, the Black Death, the 1918 flu, COVID-19, all downstream of a choice made 10,000 years ago. Nomadic humans moved too much for epidemics to catch hold. Dense farming villages, ringed by animal waste, became the perfect incubator. Domestication made civilization possible. It also made pandemics possible. So, how did humans invent animal domestication? They didn't, not in any sense that word implies. Dogs weren't recruited, they wandered in. Cats weren't captured, they followed the mice. Goats weren't tamed in a moment, but managed gradually by people who barely noticed the shift. Horses weren't broken. A naturally calmer lineage was slowly selected. Chickens weren't hunted down, they walked out of the jungle because rice grew where trees once stood. Even humans may have domesticated themselves through social selection against aggression. Domestication wasn't an invention. It was a process, sometimes taking thousands of years, driven by mutual benefit, environmental pressure, genetic drift, and an enormous amount of accident, documented independently at dozens of sites across 60 years of research. It wasn't a flash of genius. It was the longest negotiation in the history of life on this planet. Humans didn't invent domestication. Domestication invented humans, turning scattered hunter-gatherer bands into farmers, herders, city builders, the species that reshaped every ecosystem on Earth. Wolves chose firelight over wilderness. Cats chose grain stores over the desert. Goats chose managed herds over predator-filled mountains. Every domesticated species alive is the product of a conversation between two forms of life. Somewhere tonight, a dog curls up on a couch. A cat ignores its owner across the room. A horse stands in a field it never chose. A chicken lives on a farm that exists because a jungle bird wandered into a rice paddy 3,500 years ago. None of them know how they got here. But it started when a wolf eyed a pile of bones by a fire and decided staying beat leaving. And 40,000 years later, it still hasn't stopped.